You will never own anything better than this rented dump. Those words still echo in my ears. They cut straight into me like a knife. I was standing in my own small dining room, holding a tray of food I had spent hours preparing, and I froze. My daughter-in-law Bianca smirked. My son Marcus looked down at his plate, and the silence that followed was heavier than any insult I had ever received. In that moment, I realized this dinner, the one I had hoped would bring us closer, was about to tear open wounds I had been ignoring for too long. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. Stories like mine happen more often than you think, and I want to know if you've ever been made to feel small by the very people you sacrificed everything for. My name is Helen, and I am 68 years old. I live in a modest apartment that has been my home for more than 2 decades. It is not fancy, but every corner holds a piece of my life, from the framed photos on the wall to the worn but clean table where countless meals have been shared. That night, I had gone out of my way to cook. I wanted Marcus to feel loved, to remember the warmth of home, and I wanted Bianca to feel included. I made roasted chicken with garlic butter, mashed potatoes the way Marcus loved them as a child, and a fruit tart I had practiced 3 times during the week to get just right. The table was set with my best china, the kind I rarely used because I wanted tonight to feel special. I thought if they could see the effort, maybe we would have one evening without complaints or tension. But the moment Bianca stepped through the door, I knew my hope was naive. She wore a tight red dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and she looked around my apartment with that smirk she always wore when she wanted to belittle me. She didn't say hello. She didn't thank me for the dinner. She simply glanced at the curtains and said, "These look like they've been here since the 80s. Marcus chuckled nervously, fiddling with his phone, but he didn't defend me. My chest tightened, but I swallowed it down. I reminded myself this was supposed to be a family evening. As we sat down, Bianca picked up her fork and pushed the food around like it was beneath her. She sniffed the air and wrinkled her nose. "Does it always smell this old in here, Marcus?" she asked, pretending I wasn't sitting right there. Marcus mumbled something about the building being old, but his words only fueled her. I tried to change the subject. I asked about Marcus's work, about how things were going with their apartment, but every answer was short, clipped, almost resentful. Bianca leaned back in her chair and let out a laugh that was anything but friendly. Then she leaned forward and delivered that line that shattered the air. "You will never own anything better than this rented dump." The tray in my hands trembled. My lips parted, but no sound came out. I could feel the heat rising to my face, not just from humiliation, but from anger I had been holding in for months. Marcus kept his head down. He didn't say a word. That silence hurt more than Bianca's insult. It was the silence of my own son, the boy I had raised alone after his father died, the boy I had sacrificed for again and again. I forced myself to set the tray on the table. I sat down, but my hands were still shaking. I told myself not to cry, not to let her see she had gotten to me. I tried to steady my breathing, but the pounding in my chest was impossible to ignore. Bianca smirked again and reached for her wine. She whispered something under her breath about how her mother would never live like this, about how her mother had built a life with real success. She said it loud enough for me to hear, and my vision blurred for a moment. I wanted to shout. I wanted to throw her words back at her with all the bitterness that was clawing at my throat. But I stayed quiet, just for that moment. I let the silence stretch, though inside of me something had cracked wide open. What Bianca didn't know, what Marcus pretended not to remember, was that every inch of this rented apartment was paid for with sweat and sacrifice. Every dollar I saved, every meal I skipped, every night I stayed awake working just to make sure Marcus had opportunities I never had. All of it lived in these walls. And that night, as I looked across the table at their smug faces, I realized something else. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't about the size of the apartment or the curtains that hadn't been replaced. This was about respect, about dignity, about a son who had forgotten where he came from, and a daughter-in-law who thought she could erase my worth with a single cruel sentence. I stayed quiet, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. Inside, a storm was building, and though they didn't know it, they had just lit the match that would change everything. Bianca tapped her long nails against the wine glass and looked around the dining room like she was appraising a second-hand shop. Her eyes lingered on the curtains, the bookshelf, even the floor tiles. Every detail seemed to give her another reason to twist the knife. "Marcus, do you notice how stale the air feels in here?" she asked, not even pretending to whisper. "It's like the whole place has been sealed up for years." Marcus shifted in his seat and glanced at his phone again. "It's fine, Bianca. Mom keeps it clean." "Clean doesn't change old," she said flatly. Then she turned back to me with a polite smile that was anything but polite. "Shirley, don't you ever think about updating? A fresh coat of paint? Maybe some new furniture? My mum's house feels like a gallery. She says living well means surrounding yourself with beauty." Her words dripped with contempt, dressed up as advice. I gripped my fork a little tighter but said nothing. The food in front of me had already cooled. Bianca didn't stop. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes scanning the plates like she was reviewing a bad restaurant. "The chicken's overcooked, and these potatoes are too heavy. Marcus likes them creamier. My mum always makes them with truffle oil. Have you ever tried truffle oil?" I felt the heat rise in my face, but forced myself to keep my tone steady. "This is the way Marcus used to like them when he was young." She let out a laugh that stung. "When he was young, sure. But he's a grown man now. His tastes have changed. Haven't they, Marcus?" Marcus kept his eyes down. "They're fine." The way he said it, so small, so careful, told me everything. He wasn't defending me. He wasn't defending himself either. He was trying to survive the evening by disappearing into silence. Bianca smirked. She had won that round, at least in her mind. She reached for her glass, took a sip, and then shifted her attention to the shelves along the wall. "These pictures, you really keep all of these out? So many old frames. My mom switched to digital displays years ago. One touch and the whole slideshow changes, much more modern." The photos she mocked were my life. Marcus in kindergarten holding a paper crown, his high school graduation, a picture of his father, gone too soon, smiling with pride. Every frame was a memory I had carried through decades of work and sacrifice. Her voice cut through my thoughts again. "Even the silverware. It feels heavy. My mum has this sleek set from Italy. Very minimal, very chic. You'd be amazed what a difference it makes. A dining table should feel like an experience, not a relic." Marcus cleared his throat but didn't speak. His silence pressed on me harder than her words. I looked across the table at Bianca. She was young, polished, and so sure of her place above me. Her comments weren't careless. Each one was deliberate, designed to remind me that in her eyes, I was less. Less stylish, less successful, less worthy. The truth was, I had felt this coming long before tonight. Every visit carried small remarks, little digs disguised as conversation. Tonight they weren't small anymore. Tonight she was saying out loud what she had been thinking for months. I cut a piece of chicken and placed it in my mouth, though I had no appetite. I chewed slowly, breathing through the anger that sat in my chest. I knew if I spoke too soon, I might say something I could never take back. Bianca dabbed at her lips with her napkin and glanced at Marcus again. You know, Marcus, you really should think about moving. This place is so cramped. My mom could help us look for something bigger. She has all the connections in real estate. We wouldn't have to rely on, well, this. Her eyes swept the room again before landing squarely on me. Marcus shifted in his seat, his shoulders hunched. He looked like a man waiting for a storm to pass, hoping if he stayed still enough, it would miss him. I swallowed the bite of food and set my fork down. My hands rested in my lap, hidden from view, so they could tremble without giving her the satisfaction. Bianca wasn't finished. You know, Marcus, my mum says people live at the level they believe they deserve. Maybe it's time we start believing we deserve more, don't you think? He nodded faintly, and that tiny gesture hit me harder than all of her words combined. The air in the room thickened. My pulse thudded in my ears. I realized this dinner wasn't going to be about family. It wasn't going to be about kindness or gratitude. It was going to be about Bianca stripping me piece by piece until there was nothing left but silence. But I wasn't going to stay silent forever. Bianca set her glass down with a deliberate clink, the sound sharp against the quiet of the room. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and smiled at me like she had been waiting for the right moment to strike. You know what the problem is, Helen? You've lived your whole life in this tiny rented place. You don't even know what real success looks like. My mum would never let herself end up like this. Her words sliced through the air. I froze with the serving spoon still in my hand. For a second, I thought I had misheard her, that maybe she hadn't meant it the way it sounded. But the smug tilt of her head told me she knew exactly what she was doing. Marcus's fork hovered over his plate, then lowered without a sound. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at her either. He just stared at the mashed potatoes as if they might save him from having to choose a side. I felt something twist inside me. The insult was brutal enough, but it was the silence from my son that broke me. I set the spoon down and tried to steady my voice. Excuse me? Bianca leaned forward, eyes glittering with triumph. You heard me. My mother is a woman of standards. She owns property. She runs her own events. She hosts dinners where people actually respect her. And you? You rent. You cook. That's all. I looked at Marcus, searching for even the smallest sign that he would stand up for me. Nothing. His shoulders slumped, his lips parted like he might say something, then closed again. He looked trapped, but not enough to move. Bianca pressed on, her voice rising as if she wanted the neighbors to hear. Why do you think Marcus never invites his colleagues here? Because this place is embarrassing. The old curtains, the dusty shelves, the same couch you've had for decades. My mum says a home should reflect ambition. What does this reflect? The table was silent except for the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. I could feel the blood pounding in my ears. I leaned back slowly, forcing my hands to stay still in my lap. You've made your opinion very clear, I said. But she wasn't finished. No, I haven't. You need to hear the truth. You hold Marcus back. He deserves more than this. He deserves better than to live under the shadow of a woman who never aimed higher than a rented apartment. My breath caught. I looked at Marcus again, praying he would finally stop her. But he sat frozen, his face pale, his jaw tight. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend us. I felt the room tilt. For years I had swallowed her small remarks. Tonight they weren't small. Tonight she was tearing away at the one thing I had left, my dignity. I took a slow sip of water to steady myself, but the glass shook against my lips. I set it down carefully, afraid my hands would betray me. Bianca smiled, pleased with the silence she had created. She reached for another bite of food, as if humiliating me was no more disruptive than casual conversation. Finally, I spoke. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the table. If you think so little of me, Bianca, then why do you sit at my table? Why eat the food I cook? Why accept the roof I provide? Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. She blinked, then laughed. Roof you provide? Please. Marcus pays the rent. You don't. You never could. My heart pounded. I stared at her, the corners of my vision blurring. She didn't know. She had no idea. The weight of that secret pressed against my chest, begging to be released. But I held it back. Not yet. Marcus shifted in his seat, his hand tightening around his fork. Bianca, he muttered weakly. Maybe that's enough. She turned on him sharply. No, Marcus. It's not enough. Your mother needs to hear this. My mum would never let her son live like this. She would have helped us get something better. She wouldn't have kept us trapped in this mediocrity with her outdated kindness. Her words landed like blows. Every memory of sacrifice flashed through my mind. The nights I stayed up working when Marcus was a boy, the money I set aside so he could go to college, the meals I skipped so he wouldn't go hungry. And now, this woman, sitting in my home, using my table, eating my food, dared to call me a failure. The room felt smaller, tighter. My hands trembled in my lap. For the first time in years, I felt something inside me snap. I looked at Bianca, really looked at her, the polished hair, the expensive clothes, the arrogance in every gesture. She thought she had won. She thought I would stay silent. But I wasn't going to stay silent. Not anymore. I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, the sound loud in the silence. My heart hammered, but my voice came out steady. If your mother is so much better, then maybe she should be the one paying your rent. Because for the last 8 months, I've been the one keeping that roof over your heads. The words landed like a bomb. Marcus's fork clattered to his plate. His head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. What rent? Mum, what are you talking about? Bianca blinked, her smile faltering for the first time all night. Then she let out a sharp laugh. You're joking. You expect me to believe that? I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. I am not joking. $1,200 every single month. Taken from my account, given to your landlord. While you sit here, mocking me, acting like I've done nothing. I paid so you could live there without fear of eviction. Marcus's face went pale. His lips moved like he wanted to speak, but nothing came out. He looked at Bianca, desperate for her to explain, but she was already on her feet. Her chair scraped back violently. She grabbed her glass of water and with one swift motion, hurled it at me. The water splashed across my chest and face, cold and shocking. For a moment I sat frozen, drops sliding down my skin, my blouse clinging to me. You think you can humiliate me in my husband's presence? She screamed, her voice shrill. You're pathetic, lying just to get attention. Marcus stood halfway, reaching toward her, but stopped. He didn't pull her back. He didn't tell her to sit down. He just stood there, trapped between us, his face twisted with panic. I slowly picked up a napkin and dabbed at my wet blouse. My hands shook, but my voice stayed calm. Pathetic is hiding behind insults while living off someone else's sacrifice. Bianca's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted to Marcus, but he was still frozen. For the first time since she walked in, she looked unsure. I rose from my chair. My legs felt heavy, but I forced myself to stand tall. The air was thick, and every second stretched long and tense. "Do you have any idea what I gave up for those payments?" I asked, my eyes locked on Marcus. "Do you know what it cost me to keep you two in that apartment? I sold my jewelry. I skipped my medication. I ate eggs and rice for weeks so you wouldn't lose your home." Marcus's lips trembled. You never told me. "Because I trusted you," I said, my voice breaking for the first time. "I trusted that you would remember who raised you. I trusted that you would protect me from this kind of cruelty." The room went silent except for the ticking clock. My blouse clung cold to my skin, but I felt something burning hot in my chest. Bianca slammed her palms on the table. "You're lying! Marcus, she's lying to manipulate you. Your mother wants control, that's all. My mum would never behave like this." I stepped closer, closing the space between us. She flinched, just slightly, and that was enough to steady me. "I don't need to manipulate anyone," I said firmly. "The truth is plain. I have been carrying you both. And tonight, in this room, I'm done letting you spit on me while I pay your bills." Bianca's face twisted, anger and fear fighting for control. Marcus finally spoke, his voice cracking. "Mum, why didn't you tell me?" I turned to him. The sight of my son, the same boy I once rocked to sleep, sitting silent while his wife drenched me with water, was almost too much to bear. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. "Because I thought you would feel shame. Because I wanted to protect your pride. I thought if I kept the secret, maybe one day you'd thank me. Instead, you let her call me nothing." The silence that followed was suffocating. Bianca's chest heaved, her hands trembling as she clutched her empty glass. Marcus sank back into his chair, burying his face in his hands. I stood there, water dripping from my blouse, my heart pounding. Something in me had shifted. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. I closed my bedroom door behind me and leaned against it, my clothes still damp from the water Bianca had thrown at me. My hands were trembling, my chest tight, and for the first time in years, I let the tears fall without trying to stop them. I sank into the chair by the window, buried my face in my hands, and let the sobs shake through me. The apartment was quiet, but I could still hear faint murmurs from the dining room, Bianca's sharp tone cutting through the walls, Marcus's weak responses. I pressed my palms against my ears, desperate to shut them out. My body ached with humiliation. My blouse clung cold to my skin, a reminder of the way she had stood over me, glass in hand, daring me to break. "John," I whispered into the silence, calling the name I had not said out loud in years. "If you were here, what would you think? What did I do wrong for our son to let this happen?" I looked up at the photo of him on the dresser, his smile frozen in time. The tears came harder. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of questions. Where had I gone wrong? How could the boy I raised with love and sacrifice sit in silence while his wife humiliated me in my own home? The panic rose suddenly, sharp and fast, stealing my breath. My chest heaved, and for a terrifying moment, I felt like I might collapse. I gripped the arms of the chair, gasping for air. My thoughts spun in circles. Was I the problem? Had I held on too tightly, given too much, until Marcus felt he owed me nothing but contempt? I pressed a hand to my chest, forcing myself to breathe slowly, in and out. After a long minute, the panic eased. The tears slowed. I wiped my face with the edge of my sleeve and sat back, staring out the window at the streetlights glowing against the dark night. The ache was still there, but underneath it, something steadier began to form. Anger, yes, but not wild. Cold, clear anger. The kind that doesn't just burn, but sharpens. I thought of the sacrifices, selling the necklace John had given me for our 20th anniversary so Marcus could pay his tuition, skipping my own doctor visits so he and Bianca could stay afloat when he lost his last job, cooking simple meals for myself so I could put away the $1,200 each month to cover their rent. All of it dismissed, forgotten, tossed aside like it had never mattered. I stood and walked to the dresser, running my fingers over the photo of John again. His eyes, kind and steady, looked back at me. "I have been crying for too long," I whispered. "I am done begging for respect. They think I am weak. They think I will always bend, but not anymore." The words steadied me. I wiped the last of the tears from my cheeks, straightened my shoulders, and returned to the mirror. The reflection staring back was tired, wet, and red-eyed, but behind it I saw something else. A woman who had carried others for decades and was finally ready to carry herself. I changed into a dry blouse and smoothed my hair back. The humiliation of a few minutes ago still clung to me, but it no longer felt like defeat. It felt like fuel. I sat on the edge of the bed and went over the words I would use. I would not shout. I would not cry in front of them again. I would state the truth plainly, and I would cut the tie that had kept me chained to their disrespect. The sound of Bianca's voice drifted down the hall, sharper now, as if she was scolding Marcus. I closed my eyes and listened. Her anger had shifted, directed at him. I could hear the way she said his name, the way she demanded answers. It was confirmation of what I already knew. Their strength came from my silence. I stood, took one last breath, and walked back toward the dining room. My steps were steady, my heart no longer racing. The tears were gone. The fear was gone. When I reached the doorway, both of them looked up. Marcus's face was pale, his hands clenched on the table. Bianca's arms were crossed, her jaw tight. The sight of me must have surprised them, because for the first time that night, neither of them spoke. I pulled out my chair, sat down, and folded my hands on the table. My voice was calm, almost too calm. "You wanted the truth," I said. "Now you are going to hear it." I sat at the table again, my blouse clean, my face calm, my voice steady. Marcus and Bianca were both waiting for me to break, but I had already decided that I would not bend. "You think you know everything," I began, looking directly at Bianca. "But you don't know a thing about what has been happening these last 8 months. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Mum, what do you mean?" I held his gaze. "Every month, on the 5th, $1,200 leaves my account. That money goes straight to your landlord. Without me, you would have lost your apartment months ago." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief. Bianca's smirk faltered, though she tried to hold it in place. "You're lying," she said quickly. "Marcus told me he worked it out with the landlord. He said we had an extension." I shook my head slowly. "No, there was no extension. There was only me. I made sure you had a roof. I sold things I never thought I'd part with. I cut back on groceries. I skipped medication for my arthritis just to free up enough each month. And all the while you were laughing at me in my own home." Marcus's voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you begged me not to," I replied sharply. "You came to my door in tears, telling me you couldn't pay, that you didn't want Bianca to know. You said it would hurt her pride. I thought I was protecting you. In reality, I was protecting your lies." Bianca turned on him, her voice rising. "Is that true? Did you hide this from me?" Marcus dropped his eyes. His silence was answer enough. Bianca pushed back her chair and stood, her fists clenched. So all this time, I've been sitting here thinking you were providing for us, and it was her money keeping us afloat? Her voice dripped with fury, but underneath it, I heard fear. I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. It stops now. Not another cent. From tonight on, you two are on your own. Marcus's head shot up, panic written across his face. Mum, you can't. I just lost my job. I was going to tell you, I swear. We have nothing. We'll lose the apartment. That is not my problem anymore, I said, each word deliberate. I have carried you long enough. I will not sacrifice my life to support your irresponsibility. Bianca's face twisted. You can't just abandon us. Families don't do that. My mother would never abandon me. Your mother doesn't know the truth, I said coldly. But I do, and I am finished being your safety net. Marcus's voice shook. Please, Mum, just until I find another job. Give us a little more time. I stared at him, my heart heavy, but I didn't waver. Time is what I've been giving you for years, and every time you waste it. Every time you come back with excuses. I won't do it again. Bianca slammed her hands on the table. Do you know what this means for us? We'll be out on the street. Then maybe, I said calmly, you will finally learn what it means to live without biting the hand that feeds you. The words hung in the air. Bianca's face went pale, her anger draining into something closer to shock. Marcus looked like he had been punched in the stomach. I sat back in my chair, folding my hands together. I am not afraid anymore. I will not let you reduce me to nothing while I give you everything. From this moment, the money stops. The lies stop. The silence stops. Marcus rubbed his forehead, muttering under his breath. What are we going to do? What am I going to tell the landlord? You'll tell him the truth, I said. That you can't pay. That you need to figure out your life like every other adult. You'll find work, or you'll lose the place. That's how it works. Bianca's voice cracked, sharp but brittle. You think this makes you strong? It makes you cruel, heartless. No wonder you're alone in this apartment. No wonder you have nothing to show for your life. Her words should have hurt. Instead, they slid off me. I had cried all I was going to cry. I had begged all I was going to beg. I stood, my chair scraping back. I looked directly at her, then at Marcus. I may be alone, but I am free. Free from this endless cycle of disrespect. Free from your dependence. And tonight, I take back my dignity. Neither of them spoke. Marcus's head was bowed, Bianca's lips pressed tightly together. The silence was deeper than anything I had heard in that room before. I walked toward the kitchen, each step firm, leaving behind their stunned faces. For the first time in years, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. And I knew, as I wiped the last of the water from my hands, that the battle had only just begun. Bianca's chair screeched against the floor as she jumped up, her face twisted with rage. So that's it? You cut us off and just walk away? Do you have any idea what you've done? I stayed seated, my hands folded on the table. My voice was calm, but inside my chest the storm was steady. Yes, I know exactly what I've done. I've drawn the line. Marcus buried his face in his hands, his shoulders hunched. He looked more like a boy than a grown man, and the sight hurt me more than I wanted to admit. But pity was no longer enough to guide me. Bianca paced the room, her heels clacking against the floor. You've ruined everything. Do you know what people will say when they find out? That we couldn't even pay our own rent? that my husband was living off his mother's pity. You've humiliated us. I raised my eyes to her. No, Bianca. You humiliated yourselves. I simply stopped covering for you. Her jaw clenched, her hands tightening into fists. She looked ready to throw something, and for a moment I braced myself. But instead, she turned sharply toward Marcus. Say something. Don't just sit there. Tell her she can't do this to us. Marcus lifted his head slowly, his eyes red. What do you want me to say? Tell her she has to keep paying, Bianca demanded. She owes us that much after dragging us into this mess. Marcus looked at me, then back at her. His lips parted, but no words came. I spoke before he could. I owe you nothing. I gave and gave until there was nothing left to give. That ends now. Bianca let out a bitter laugh. Listen to her, Marcus. She thinks she's some kind of hero, but she's nothing. Just an old woman who'll die alone in a rented place. The words were sharp, but I didn't flinch. My voice cut through her sneer. You keep saying rented as if it's shameful, but shameful is living off someone else and pretending it's your own success. Shameful is insulting the person who's been keeping you afloat. That shame belongs to you, not me. Her face flushed red. She pointed a finger at me, her voice shrill. If you stop paying, we'll be homeless. And when that happens, everyone will know it was your fault. Your name will be dirt. People will see you for the selfish, bitter woman you really are. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. He finally spoke, his tone weak. Bianca, stop. But she ignored him. She leaned over the table, her eyes blazing. You think you've won something by cutting us off? You haven't. You've destroyed your own family. You've lost your son. The words stung, but I refused to let them sink in. I kept my voice firm. I would rather lose my son than lose myself. Marcus's eyes flicked up to mine, and I saw the conflict there. Shame, guilt, and something else. Maybe a flicker of recognition. But he said nothing. Bianca let out a frustrated scream and grabbed her purse from the chair. I can't stay here and listen to this. Marcus, are you coming or not? He hesitated. His hands gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. I don't know. Her voice rose. What do you mean you don't know? She just humiliated you in front of your own wife. She's cutting us off, and you're going to sit there like a child. Get up. Marcus looked at me again. His lips trembled, but still no words. Finally, Bianca stormed toward the door. Fine. Stay here and grovel. I'll be at my mother's, where people actually respect me. The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the apartment. For a moment, the silence was heavy. Marcus sat with his head in his hands. I sat with my back straight, my heart steady. He finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Mum, what am I supposed to do? I looked at him, my son who had once been so full of promise. You grow up, Marcus. You face the truth. You find a way to stand on your own 2 feet. He lifted his head, eyes wet. I don't know if I can. You can, I said firmly, but only if you stop hiding behind me. Only if you stop letting her use me as a shield. He swallowed hard. She'll never forgive me if she finds out I lied about the rent. She'll say I made her look like a fool. That's not my problem, I replied. And it shouldn't be yours either. You married her, not her pride. If you can't be honest in your own marriage, then maybe that's the first thing you need to fix. His shoulders slumped. He looked exhausted, broken. But for the first time, I saw him listening. I stood and gathered the plates from the table. The food was cold, untouched. I carried them to the sink, the simple act, steadying me. Marcus followed me into the kitchen, his voice shaky. Are you really serious, Mom? Not another dollar? Not another dollar, I said, turning to face him. I gave you months of help. And what did I get in return? Silence when your wife insulted me. Silence when she drenched me in water. Silence when she called me worthless. No more, Marcus. I am finished sacrificing myself for people who don't respect me. He looked down at the floor, his voice soft. I don't know how to fix this. That's because you've never had to try, I told him. But now you will. The apartment was quiet again. He lingered in the kitchen for a while, watching me wash the plates, before finally heading to the door. As he reached for his coat, he turned back. His voice cracked. I never wanted it to be like this. I met his eyes one last time. Neither did I. But sometimes the only way forward is through the fire. He nodded slowly, then left. The door closed behind him, leaving me alone in the stillness. I stood in the kitchen, water dripping from the faucet, my hands steady on the sink. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom. The next morning came heavy, the kind of silence that settles after a storm, but leaves the air tense, waiting for the next strike. I made coffee and sat by the window, staring at the street below. My phone buzzed on the table. Marcus. I let it ring the first time, then the second, but by the third I answered. Mom. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't slept. We need to talk. There's nothing left to talk about, I said. I was clear last night. Please, he begged, just give me a chance to explain. Bianca is furious. She says we can't stay in the apartment if you won't pay. I don't know what to do. You find a way, I said simply. That's what adults do. He was silent for a long moment. Then he whispered, Can I come by? I hesitated, then sighed. Come. An hour later, he stood at my door. He looked worse than I expected. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes swollen. He stepped inside without speaking, sat at the kitchen table, and buried his face in his hands. She won't stop yelling, he muttered. She keeps saying I've ruined her life. She wants me to make you pay again. She said if I don't, she's leaving. I poured him a cup of coffee and set it in front of him. And what do you want? His shoulders sagged. I don't know. I'm scared, Mum. I lost my job. I lied to her. And now everything is falling apart. If she leaves, I lose everything. You already lost yourself, I said quietly. He lifted his head, his eyes wet. I know, but I don't know how to fix it. I thought maybe if you could just cover this month. I cut him off. No, not one more month. You need to hear me, Marcus. I will not carry this burden anymore. He flinched at my tone, then nodded slowly. The doorbell rang suddenly, sharp and insistent. Marcus's eyes widened. It's her. I opened the door, and Bianca swept in like a storm. Her hair was immaculate, her makeup flawless, but her eyes were wild. She dropped her designer purse on the floor and pointed at me. You're destroying my marriage, she snapped. Do you understand that? He's nothing without me. And I'm nothing if people think we're broke. You've humiliated us in front of everyone. I stayed calm. The only people who know the truth are in this room. Her laugh was cold. Not for long. Do you think I won't tell people? Do you think I won't make sure everyone knows your son couldn't pay his rent, that you had to swoop in and save him like a pathetic old woman with no life of her own? Marcus jumped up. Bianca, stop! She spun on him. You lied to me. You let me believe you were taking care of us while she was footing the bill. Do you know how stupid that makes me look? My mother will never forgive this. My friends will never forgive this. Her voice cracked at the edges, but her fury was still sharp. I stepped forward, my voice low but steady. Your friends don't live here. Your mother doesn't live here. This is between the three of us, and I am done being your target. She glared at me, her chest heaving. You think you can just cut us off and walk away? Fine. But don't think you'll get away clean. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of mother you are. Cold, bitter, selfish. Marcus grabbed her arm. Enough. She's still my mother. The words hung in the air, heavier than anything he had said the night before. Bianca jerked her arm away, staring at him in disbelief. You're taking her side? She hissed. Marcus's voice shook, but he didn't back down. She's right. We've been living off her. I let it happen. And you've been tearing her down while eating food she paid for. It's wrong, Bianca. It's all wrong. She staggered back like he had slapped her. You ungrateful coward. You'd rather defend her than fight for me? He looked down, his voice barely audible. I can't defend lies anymore. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then Bianca grabbed her purse and stormed to the door. You'll regret this, both of you. You'll end up with nothing. The door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the apartment. Marcus sank back into his chair, shaking his head. She'll never forgive me. She'll tell everyone. I'll lose everything. You'll lose her approval, I corrected. And maybe that's the best thing that could happen. He buried his face in his hands again. I don't know how to be without her. You'll learn, I said softly. The same way you'll learn to live without my money, by standing on your own. He looked up, his eyes searching mine. Do you really believe I can? I held his gaze. Yes, but only if you stop hiding and start fighting for yourself. The silence stretched, heavy but different now. Not the silence of humiliation, but the silence that follows a truth spoken out loud. Marcus nodded slowly, his face pale but resolute. Then I'll try. I don't know how, but I'll try. I stood, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said the words I had been holding back for years. That's all I've ever wanted. The week dragged like a stone tied to my chest. Marcus called twice, each time sounding smaller, each time asking questions he already knew the answers to. Are you sure, Mum? Not even for this month? And each time I told him no. Bianca didn't call at all, but I knew her silence wasn't surrender. It was plotting. On Friday evening, there was a knock at my door. Sharp, confident, not Marcus's hesitant knock. When I opened it, Bianca stood there, her arms crossed, her eyes cold. Marcus was behind her, pale, shifting nervously. We need to talk, she said, brushing past me without waiting for permission. She moved into the living room like she owned it, her heels clicking against the floor. Marcus trailed behind, his shoulders slumped. I closed the door and turned. Then talk. Bianca spun to face me. You think you're clever cutting us off. You think you've taken control. But you don't realize how much damage you've done. Marcus has been humiliated at work. People are whispering. My mother is furious. And do you know why? Because word spreads. It always does. I kept my face calm. Your lies spread. I just stopped funding them. Her lips curled. You want the truth so badly? Fine. The landlord called this morning. We're behind on rent again. He said we have 2 weeks before eviction. 2 weeks, Helen. Do you know what that means? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Bianca. She shot him a glare that silenced him. It means we'll be out on the street. And when that happens, everyone will know. Everyone will ask why. And I'll tell them. I'll tell them that while my mother raised me to be strong, Marcus's mother kept him weak, that you coddled him, smothered him, and then abandoned him. I took a slow breath, then stood. I walked to the cabinet by the wall and pulled out a folder. Marcus watched me, his face tightening with unease. Bianca narrowed her eyes. I laid the folder on the table and opened it. Inside were documents, official papers, contracts. You think you know the truth, I said quietly. But you don't. Bianca scoffed. What is this? Some pathetic attempt to scare me? I slid the top page toward her. The deed. To your apartment building. Marcus blinked, his mouth falling open. What? Bianca laughed, shaking her head. You're lying. I looked her straight in the eye. Check the name. She snatched the paper and scanned it, her face drained of colour. Marcus leaned over her shoulder, his eyes widening. It's her name, he whispered. Mum, it's your name. Bianca dropped the paper like it burned. This is impossible. It's not impossible, I said. While you were mocking me for renting, I was buying. I purchased your building last month, quietly through a broker, which means that while you've been sneering about my so-called failures, you've been living under my roof, my rules. The room went silent. Bianca's face turned red, then white, then red again. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Marcus stumbled back into a chair, his hands in his hair. You, Bianca's voice cracked. You mean you could evict us? I nodded. If I choose. In fact, I could have you out in 2 weeks, not because you can't pay, but because I no longer want tenants who spit in my face. Marcus looked at me with wide, panicked eyes. Mum, please, don't. Bianca finally found her voice, shrill and desperate. This isn't fair. You tricked us. No, I said firmly. I gave you every chance to live with dignity. You chose to insult me, to use me, to strip me of my worth. And now you live with the consequences. She shook her head wildly. You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare. I leaned forward. Try me. For the first time, Bianca's mask cracked. Her voice wavered. If you do this, I'll lose everything. My friends, my reputation. Marcus will lose me. Marcus buried his face in his hands. Bianca, stop. She whirled on him. Are you going to let her do this to us? She's your mother, but she's destroying us. His voice was small. She already saved us, Bianca. We just never admitted it. The silence that followed was suffocating. Bianca stared at him as if he had betrayed her. Her hands shook. You're siding with her? Marcus looked up, his eyes wet. I'm siding with the truth. She let out a strangled cry and turned back to me. You're cruel, heartless. No wonder you're alone. I didn't flinch. Better alone with dignity than surrounded by parasites. Bianca staggered back, her breathing ragged. She looked at Marcus one last time, her eyes full of fury. If you stay with her, you'll regret it. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Marcus sat in silence, staring at the table. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. You really own it? The whole building? I nodded. Yes, I did it to secure my future, and to prove, at least to myself, that I am not the weak woman she thinks I am. He exhaled shakily. I don't know what to say. Then say nothing, I told him. Just start acting like a man who doesn't need to be rescued. He nodded slowly, tears sliding down his cheeks. I will try. I swear I will try. I placed my hand on his shoulder. For the first time, he didn't pull away. 2 days after Bianca stormed out, the consequences began to take shape. I had expected her silence to mean she was planning something, and I was right. On Monday afternoon, my phone rang. It was the property manager of the building I now owned. His voice was uneasy. Mrs. Harris, I thought you should know. Bianca called this morning. She was screaming about unfair treatment, claiming she was being targeted. She told me you were abusing your position as the owner. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying myself. And what did you tell her? I told her the facts, that her lease is month to month, that she is behind on rent, and that the new owner has every right to enforce the terms. Still, she said she'd go to court if you tried to evict her. I thanked him for the update, hung up, and sat in silence. The war Bianca had promised was here. By evening, Marcus showed up at my door again. He looked worn, his eyes red. He sat at the table without me asking and spoke before I could. She's out of control, Mom. She's telling everyone we know that you tricked her, that you set her up to fail. She says she's going to the housing board. She even called my old boss, trying to ruin me. I studied him carefully. And what are you going to do? His hands clenched. I don't know. I can't control her. She blames me for everything now. She says I made her look like a fool. You did lie to her, I reminded him. I know, he said quickly, his voice breaking. But she's using it as an excuse to burn everything down. She wants revenge, not the truth. I let the silence sit between us. He stared at the table, his shoulders slumped. Finally, I spoke. She can scream all she wants. The law is clear. She is behind on rent, and I will not let her dictate my life with tantrums and threats. The next day, the knock on my door was louder, angrier. When I opened it, Bianca stood there, her face set, her eyes sharp with fury. She pushed inside without asking, Marcus trailing behind her, looking as if he had been dragged. You think you can humiliate me and get away with it, she snapped. I've spoken to lawyers. You can't just throw us out. You're abusing your power. I stood still, arms crossed. I am enforcing the lease, nothing more. You're doing this to punish me, she shot back. You want to see me suffer. Well, congratulations. You've ruined your son's marriage. You've ruined his life. How does it feel to destroy your own family? Marcus tried to calm her. Bianca, please. She whirled on him. Don't you dare defend her. She's playing you against me. Can't you see that? She wants you to crawl back to her, to make her the hero again. Her words were sharp. But Marcus didn't flinch the way he once did. He looked exhausted, hollowed out. She isn't the one who lied, he said quietly. She isn't the one who spent money we didn't have, like nothing was wrong. Bianca froze, her mouth opening but no words coming out. I seized the moment. You wanted the truth, Bianca. Here it is. I paid for your roof, your dinners, your so-called life. I bought the building you live in, not to flaunt power, but to protect myself. And what did you do in return? You insulted me, drenched me in water, mocked the very sacrifices that kept you afloat. Her face twisted, red with fury. You'll regret this, she hissed. I'll make sure of it. I straightened my back. No, Bianca, you are already living the regret. Every word you've spoken, every cruel look, every moment of disrespect is coming back to you now. Not because I plotted against you, but because you built your world on lies. Marcus stood between us, his voice unsteady, but stronger than I'd heard in years. Bianca, I can't do this anymore. I can't live in constant fear of your anger, Your pride. Mum didn't ruin us. We ruined ourselves. You can leave if you want, but I won't beg her for money again. Not ever." Her eyes widened, shock flooding her expression. For once she seemed unsure of herself. She looked from him to me, waiting for me to falter. But I didn't. "You're pathetic," she spat finally, grabbing her purse. "Both of you. Pathetic." She stormed out again, the sound of the door slamming ringing through the apartment. Marcus sank into a chair, covering his face with his hands. His voice was muffled, but clear. "It's over. She won't come back this time." I sat across from him. Maybe that's for the best. He lowered his hands, his eyes raw. "I don't know what to do without her. But I also don't know how to keep living like this. I've been lying for so long, Mum. Lying to her, to you, to myself. And now everything is gone." "Not everything," I said gently. "You still have a chance. You still have the ability to change. But it has to start now. No more lies, no more hiding." He nodded slowly, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I'll try. I swear I'll try." The following week, the eviction notice went through, legally filed, official. Bianca didn't return. Word spread, as she promised it would, but not the way she imagined. People whispered, yes, but not about me. They whispered about her, about how she had lived in luxury while secretly depending on an old woman she mocked, about how she left Marcus when the truth came out. For the first time in years, I walked into my own home without the weight of shame. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was peace. And for Marcus, the consequences had finally arrived. No wife, no job, no apartment. But in that loss, there was something else, something new, the beginning of accountability. The day after the eviction notice was finalized, Marcus came to my apartment again. He looked tired, thinner, and his eyes carried the weight of everything that had collapsed around him. I let him in without a word, and he sat at the table like he always had, except this time he didn't try to hide behind silence. "She's gone," he said flatly. "She packed her things, went to her mother's, and told me not to follow her." I poured 2 cups of coffee, set one in front of him, and sat down. "And what are you going to do now?" He let out a shaky laugh. "That's the problem. I don't know. I've spent so long letting other people decide for me that I don't even know what I want anymore." I studied his face, the dark circles under his eyes, the slump of his shoulders. For the first time, I saw a man stripped of excuses, standing face to face with the reality he had built. "You'll figure it out," I said quietly, "but it won't be easy. Change never is." He nodded, staring into his cup. "She said I'd regret taking your side. She said you poisoned me against her. Do you think she's right?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Marcus. You chose the truth. That was the first real choice you've made in years. Don't regret it. Learn from it." He pressed his hands together, leaning forward. "The truth is, I've been scared of her for a long time. Scared of what she'd say, what she'd do if I disappointed her. It was easier to lie to both of you than to face her anger. I thought I was protecting myself. I see now I was just digging a deeper hole." The admission hung in the air. I sipped my coffee, letting him sit with the words. Finally, I asked, "And what about me? Why did you let her humiliate me in my own home?" His face crumpled. "Because I was ashamed. I knew you were helping us, even before you said it. I felt like a failure. Letting her talk down to you was easier than admitting she was right about me being weak." His honesty stung, but it was real. For once, there were no excuses. I raised you to be strong, I said, my voice firm. Not perfect, not rich, but strong. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that. You let her voice replace your own. You let her pride become your prison. He wiped at his face with the back of his hand. I know, and I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to keep hiding behind lies and fear. I leaned back, watching him. Then prove it. Find work. Pay your own bills. Face your mistakes without running to me for help. That's how you'll prove it. His eyes met mine, filled with something new. Determination, maybe. Or desperation turned into resolve. I will. I swear I will. The room fell quiet, but it wasn't the heavy silence of before. It was different, fragile, like a new beginning waiting to be tested. Later that week, Bianca returned once more, but not to Marcus. She came to me. It was late evening, and when I opened the door, she stood there with her arms crossed, her eyes blazing. "You've destroyed my marriage," she said coldly. "I hope you're proud of yourself." I held the door open but didn't invite her in. "I didn't destroy anything. You did that yourself." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You think you've won. You think owning that building makes you powerful. But you're still just a lonely old woman clinging to control. Marcus may have chosen you now, but one day he'll see you for what you really are." I met her glare without flinching. "What I am is the woman who kept a roof over your head while you mocked me. What I am is the mother who finally stopped letting her son live in chains. If that makes me lonely, so be it. But I am not weak. Not anymore." For the first time, I saw her hesitate. Her eyes flickered, her jaw tightened, and for a brief second she looked less like the flawless figure she tried to be, and more like a frightened girl lashing out. She recovered quickly, scoffing. "You'll regret crossing me." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "No, Bianca. You'll regret underestimating me." Her face twisted, and without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed down the hall. The sound of her heels faded, and I closed the door behind her. When I turned, Marcus was standing there, having heard everything. His face was pale, but his eyes were steady. "She's not coming back," he said softly. "No," I agreed. "She isn't." He swallowed hard. "Then it's just me now." "Just you," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "And it's time you learn what that means." He nodded slowly, the weight of the truth settling on his shoulders, and for the first time, he didn't look away. The weeks that followed moved slower than I expected. For the first time in years, my apartment was quiet. No tense dinners, no sharp words at the table, no raised voices echoing through the walls. Marcus came by often, sometimes with nothing to say, just sitting with me in silence. At first, the visits felt heavy, full of guilt and shame, but slowly the tone changed. One evening he arrived with a small envelope in his hand. His clothes were cleaner, his posture straighter. He set the envelope on the table and pushed it toward me. "What is this?" I asked. He looked nervous and determined. "The first rent check I've paid on my own in months. It's small. I'm staying in a tiny place across town. But it's mine. I got a job at the warehouse. It's not glamorous, but it's steady. And I'm not asking you for anything." I opened the envelope and saw the slip of paper inside. My throat tightened, but I smiled. "I'm proud of you, Marcus." His eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while, I saw my son as he used to be. Not the frightened man who hid behind lies, but the boy who used to run to me for comfort. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said quietly. I shook my head. No, this time, you did it without me. That's the point. He nodded, tears filling his eyes. I'm sorry, Mum, for everything, for letting her insult you, for staying quiet, for making you carry all of it. I can't take back what I did, but I can try to be better. I reached across the table and took his hand. Then be better. That's all I've ever wanted. The next day brought another surprise. Bianca called me. Her voice on the line was shaky, nothing like the sharp, confident tone she always used. Helen, can we meet? Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part knew this moment had to come. We agreed to meet at a small cafe in town. When I arrived, she was already there, her hair pulled back, her makeup lighter than usual. She looked smaller somehow, not physically but in spirit. She didn't waste time. I was wrong, she said, her voice low. I let my pride run everything. I thought humiliating you would make me feel stronger, but it only made me look weak. Marcus told me you bought the building. He told me you stopped paying so he could finally stand on his own. I hated you for it at first. I blamed you for everything. But now I see that you were right. I studied her face carefully. Why are you telling me this now? Because I don't want to keep living like this, she admitted. I thought money and appearances made me powerful, but the truth is, they made me cruel. I hurt you when you were the one helping us the most, and I drove Marcus away with my anger. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed to say it out loud. Her words hung between us, fragile and uncertain. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I took a slow breath. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, Bianca. It's about not carrying the weight forever. I can't erase what you did, but I don't want to live with bitterness either. If you truly mean what you're saying, then maybe this is a start. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded quickly, almost gratefully. Thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you. We sat in silence for a while, sipping our coffee. It wasn't friendship, not yet. But it wasn't war anymore either. When I left the cafe, I felt lighter. Justice had been served, not by punishment, but by truth. And forgiveness, fragile as it was, had begun to grow. That night, Marcus called me. She told me she met you, he said. Yes, I answered. Do you think we'll ever be okay again? I thought for a moment. Not the way things were, but maybe in a better way, if both of you are willing to change. He was quiet, then said softly, I am. And for the first time, I believed him. In the weeks that followed, I moved forward too. I took the steps I had been putting off, investing in myself instead of everyone else. The building I bought became more than protection. It became proof that I could take control of my life, even at my age. Marcus worked hard. He saved money. Sometimes he came to dinner, just the two of us, simple meals with no tension. Bianca came once, too, sitting quietly, watching, listening more than speaking. It wasn't perfect, but it was something new. Looking back now, I see that the insults, the humiliation, the tears, even the water thrown in my face, they were the breaking point I needed. They forced me to draw the line, to stop living as if my worth depended on how much I gave. I won my dignity back. I gained the strength to say no. And in the process, Marcus found the chance to grow. Even Bianca, for all her cruelty, had to face herself in the mirror. That was justice. That was the beginning of healing. Because sometimes victory isn't about defeating someone else. It's about standing tall when they try to cut you down. It's about finding peace in truth and forgiveness in strength. I want to thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive those painful moments, but I hope it shows that even in the darkest conflicts, there's always a chance for justice and for healing. If you've ever faced disrespect or betrayal, I want you to know that you don't have to accept it. You can draw the line, you can stand up for yourself. And sometimes, even after all the hurt, forgiveness can find its place. Tell me in the comments how you would handle a situation like this.